What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. On tonight's episode, we got a couple more big names that made some moves in the transfer portal that we'll go over for college basketball, but the main theme of the episode is going to be the NBA playoffs. We have all the first round matchups set. We have the play-in tournaments finished up. So we'll look at each of the 8 series that are going to go on in the first round. And on top of that, I'll also be giving my NBA award predictions, with how I would fill out my ballots for each award, and a little bit about the Warriors and the Knicks and how they should approach next season. So hope everybody is doing well. We also want to introduce our newest sponsor. This episode is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together, with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. The NBA playoffs are here, starting this week. This past week we did the NBA play-in tournament. We're going to be doing a variety of different games throughout the NBA playoffs as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We've already gone live a few different times to go over the NBA play-in tournament. We'll be coming soon with some baseball for you guys too. So definitely come check that out. And we're happy to announce Playback as our lead sponsor here at the network. So jumping right into things, we'll lead off the show with AJ Storr choosing Kansas. So AJ Storr, it was probably in a lot of people's eyes the top top player in the transfer portal. He was a top 100 recruit, went to St. John's for his first year, had a pretty solid freshman season, and decided to go to transfer to Wisconsin last year and was a complete stud this year. He was Wisconsin's best player for a team that was ranked in the top 25 for the big chunk of the season, and made a lot of people get really excited for what he can hold with 2 years left of eligibility. After Wisconsin's season ended, he declared for the NBA draft while entering the transfer portal, and pretty much everybody went after him. He had a choice from almost every school that you can pick of. He was one of the most highly sought after guys, so he decided to choose Kansas, and he is now the third big time transfer that Kansas has landed this offseason. He averaged 16.8 points, 3.9 rebounds this past season for Wisconsin. Kansas also landed Zeke Mayo, who's another guard from South Dakota State. He'll be he's going to be a 4th-year senior next year. So as you know, many people know too, this is the last year of the 5th-year senior of the extra year of eligibility for COVID. So all seniors next year are going to be true seniors as well, so they automatically don't get an extra year of eligibility. But Zeke Mayo will be a senior next year, so he has 1 year left. From South Dakota State, he averaged 18.8 points, 5.7 rebounds, and shot 39% from 3 this past season. And Riley Kugel as well, who was a sophomore at Florida. He'll also be joining Kansas next year. He was a high recruit in the top 100, but didn't really do much in his first 2 years at Florida. Had some good moments this season as a sophomore, but it lacked a lot of playing time. Only averaged 9.2 points, 3.5 rebounds this season. So he'll be going into his junior year, 2 years of eligibility left, and he'll come over to join Kansas. And looking at Kansas' team heading into next year, Kevin McCullough Jr. is on his way out. Nick Timberlake and Parker Brown were all 5th-year seniors this past year, so they're all won't be coming back this year. Kevin McCullough could be a possible lottery pick in this upcoming NBA draft as well. But they're slated to bring back DeJuan Harris Jr., who will be entering his 5th year as a 5th-year senior. KJ Adams, who will be entering his 5th year as a fifth-year senior. Marco Jackson, who was who was a 5-star freshman this past year, didn't really see much playing time. He should get a little bit of a bigger role as a sophomore this upcoming year. And then they have a couple of guys who are questionable for the draft. Johnny Furphy, who was a freshman this past year, who a lot of people who declared for the draft, but is just testing the process as of right now. He's a projected late first, early second round pick. And then Hunter Dickinson, too, who has 1 year of eligibility left. He was a senior this year, but he gets his grad year, his extra year because of COVID. So a lot of people are wondering, we haven't heard a word from him if he's going to be entering the NBA draft or if he is going to enter and keep the window open to go to Kansas, or if he's just going to enter and decide his college career is over, or if he's just going to decide to go straight back to Kansas for a 5th year and run it back for one final season. So there's waiting to see on Furphy and Dickinson. Those are 2 big pieces that getting even one of those guys back would be huge. And then they have 3 top 40 freshmen coming in as well. Their top guy is the number 9 recruit in the nation, center Flory Badunga. He's a little bit of a raw 6'9" big man, so he'll probably see time off the bench this season. And then point guard LeBaron Fallon and shooting guard Rakeem Passmore, who are ranked 30th and 36th in ESPN's top 100. So they got 1 5-star and 2 4-stars coming in as freshmen this upcoming year. So assuming that all goes right and say Furphy and Dickinson decide to come back, their best case scenario, potential starting 5 could be DeJuan Harris Jr. and A.J. Storr in the backcourt, with Johnny Furphy, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson in the front court. And coming off the bench would be Riley Kugel, Zeke Mayo, Flory Badunga, Marco Jackson, LeBaron Fallon, and Rakeem Passmore. And that's assuming they don't land anybody else. So they have the opportunity to, if all those guys come back, I don't see how this team isn't the preseason number 1 team in the country. As of right now, a lot of people are projecting, what's going to happen, things like that. I've seen Houston is probably going to end up bringing in some guys, and they're already bringing LJ Cryer back for his 5th year. They are going to lose Jamal Shed, though, who's going to enter the NBA draft. But I've seen a lot of people have Houston as the preseason number 1 already. It's way too early preseason number 1. We'll get that out right now, but we'll definitely keep that out right now. But people are going to look at it and try to get an idea of what kind of teams everybody's going to have over the next couple of weeks, especially with the transfer portal and stuff getting much more and more intense. And then besides AJ Storr, the other big name that chose his destination, who was in the transfer portal, is Kanaan Carlyle. So Carlyle was a top-rated freshman this past year from Stanford. He had a very solid freshman season. Stanford's head coach got fired, and they had a couple of the big freshmen, him and Andrei Stojakovic, who's Peja Stojakovic's son, were their 2 big freshmen that both are in the transfer portal. But Kanaan Carlyle decided to join Indiana. So this is the second big-time transfer that Indiana was able to land. They also got Umar Ballo, who is going to be a grad senior from Arizona, who had a spectacular year this past year for the Wildcats, basically being probably their best all-around player. He's coming into Indiana. Carlisle will join him at Indiana, and they should be returning Mackenzie Mbako, who was a little bit of a disappointment this season. Was a 5-star freshman, but kind of was in the front court alongside Cleo Ware, so he wasn't the big man below. But Mbako and Ballo down low with Carlisle in the backcourt is definitely going to be a very, very interesting situation. And they do have a 5-star freshman coming in as well, Indiana. Bryson Tucker, who's a small forward, who's ranked 17th in the country in the top 100, will also be coming in. So Indiana's putting together a pretty solid program. And this really is a do-or-die year for Mike Woodson and Indiana. Since he's gotten there, he's been able to get some big time recruits. He's been able to get some big time guys in the transfer portal, but they haven't been able to compete that much. It didn't even end up making the tournament this year. So the clock is going to win. A lot of people thought that they were going to be a very solid team going into this season with Khalil Ware coming in and Mackenzie Mbako coming in and a few other guys. So the clock is ticking, and another disappointing year from Woodson probably will spell the end of his time at Indiana. So this is a big make or break season for him, and these were two really big gets to help his case, I think. And the Big Ten's only getting bigger. Both the Big Ten and the Big 12 are adding a couple of Pac-12 teams each. So the Big Ten, even though it hasn't been that competitive over the last couple of years, it's going to get a little bit stronger this season. The Big 12 has been the powerhouse of college basketball over the last several years, and they're going to get even tougher now too with the teams that they're going to be adding as well. But Kanaan Carlyle choosing Indiana, I thought was a pretty cool choice. Made things a little bit interesting. And I'm excited to see what Indiana is able to put together this season, honestly. And hopefully they're able to do something good. And jumping over from college basketball, we'll jump right into the NBA. Nothing really else needs to be said on the college basketball front. NBA playoffs first round matchups. So the first round matchups have all been set in the NBA playoffs. We got, obviously in the Eastern Conference, we got the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics taking on the number 8 seed Miami Heat. Miami lost the first play-in game, but was able to beat the Chicago Bulls to get the 8 seed. 4 seed Cleveland Cavaliers versus the 5 seed Orlando Magic. 3 seed Milwaukee Bucks versus the 6 seed Indiana Pacers. And then the 2 seed New York Knicks versus the 7 seed Philadelphia 76ers, who beat the Miami Heat in the first game of the play-in tournament to get the 7th seed. So that's the Eastern Conference side of things. And the first matchup to look at is the Celtics versus the Heat. So going into it, you see Celtics versus Heat and how competitive those two teams have been over the last couple of years. I mean, the Heat have been the Eastern Conference champions twice in the past 4 seasons, and the Celtics once in the past 4 seasons, and all 3 of those times they lost to the Western Conference opponent. The Celtics and the Miami Heat have definitely formed a little bit of a rivalry. So this series in and of itself is going to be interesting. Definitely going to be interesting to see, just from kind of a little bit of a rivalry standpoint, because the two teams have kind of gone at it over the last couple of seasons. We saw Miami knock off Boston last year, ended up making it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they lost to the Denver Nuggets. So this is just not your typical 1 versus 8. But the only problem is this is not the same Miami Heat team. Jimmy Butler, game 1 already finished. The Boston Celtics completely destroyed the Miami Heat in the first game of this series. They manhandled them practically the entire series, throughout practically the entire game, I should say. And Jimmy Butler obviously didn't play in the first game. He's dealing with those injuries that he sustained in the play-in tournament. So we'll see how long he's out for. Even if he's back, this Celtics team finished 64-18. They almost seem like they're destined to, at the very least, make it back to the NBA Finals. So they're going to be, if anybody's going to knock them out, it's going to take a huge performance, and it's going to take clicking on all cylinders. And I don't think the Heat are doing that right now. I really don't. Bam Adebayo had a fantastic season. Jaime Jaquez had a good performance in their first game, and they're getting decent performances from a few other guys. Nikola Jovic has stepped up a little bit. Kevin Love is stepping up a little bit, coming off the bench. But I think the Celtics team is way too deep. And I'm not too sure if Jimmy Butler's going to play very much this series. Even if he does play, he's probably going to be hobbled a little bit. I like Boston this series. I think it could be a clean sweep as well. So my prediction for this series is Boston in 4, especially after seeing this first game right there. And then we got the number 4 ranked Cleveland Cavaliers versus the number 5 ranked Orlando Magic. Winner of this game would play the winner of Celtics versus Heat, which most likely the Celtics. In the following round. First game was all Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs are up 1-0 now in the series. They ended up winning the first game on Saturday, they completely overmatched the Magic. It was in Cleveland. The Magic, they kind of took the lead from the beginning and didn't hold anything back. Orlando fought back a little bit throughout the game, but just were not able to put up the performances that they needed to. Donovan Mitchell had 30 points and was 3 for 8 from 3. Jared Allen had a great game down low, 16 points and 18 rebounds. And then on the Magic side, Paolo Banchero had a very good game at 24 points and 7 rebounds. Franz Wagner added 18 points and 7 rebounds as well. But besides those two, who were their 2-star players, they didn't really get much of a performance from anybody else. Cole Anthony shot 0 for 7 from the field off the bench. They just did not have a very good game. And in the last episode, when we were going over, when me and Nick were going over the play-ins / the games that were already decided, we already knew that it was going to be Cavs versus Magic. And one of the main things that we said is the lack of veteran leadership, the lack of veteran leadership and the lack of games played in the playoffs is going to come back and hurt the Magic a lot. The Magic have had a great season, but Cleveland is war-tested at this point. They have been in this same nucleus of players have been in the playoffs together and have made it far over the last few years. Donovan Mitchell has been in the playoffs practically every year throughout his career. I think he's actually been in the playoffs every year in his career going back to the Jazz. He's never made it to a conference final though, but he's got so much playoff experience. And then you got the Orlando Magic, who have practically no playoff experience. You have Joe Ingles coming off the bench, who has a little bit. They have a couple of random guys who have seen a little bit, but their star players, Banchero, this was his first career playoff game. Franz Wagner's first career playoff game. Cole Anthony's first career playoff game. So I do think that the Cavaliers will end up taking this series. I think it became pretty evident after the first game, but I like the Cavs in 5. I would say I think the Magic are going to put up a little bit of a fight. They're not going to get blown out every game. I think they're going to steal a game at some point, but I think the Cavs are going to kind of get a good hold on them and we'll end up taking the series. And then we'll see Celtics versus Cavaliers in the second round in the Eastern Conference, which will definitely be very interesting. And then the other series, we got the number 3 ranked Milwaukee Bucks versus number 6 Indiana Pacers. So this is an interesting series. The series tips off Sunday, so we don't have any information on the beginning of the series as this episode is being recorded. All we know is that the Milwaukee Bucks will be without Giannis Antetokounmpo to start the series. Huge blow. This was a series. This is a sneaky series, regardless of even if Giannis plays. Milwaukee has not been a great team in the second half of the season. They started off red hot. We don't know what happened. We talked about this in the last episode, either the whole Adrian Griffin thing. He got fired halfway through the season, brought in Doc Rivers, and the team has not played well under Doc Rivers at all. And there seems like there's something wrong. Damian Lillard doesn't seem like the same player. There seems like there's some type of disconnect between the team. There's definitely a lot of issues with the Bucks right now. And the Pacers are a little bit of a sneaky team. Pacers are healthy right now. Tyrese Halliburton's had an all-NBA season, making the all-star team. He's become their leader and a star player. Miles Turner has had a great season. Gotten a couple of other good seasons from Benedict Mathurin and Aaron Nesmith, a few other guys. So this is definitely a sneaky team. And even if Giannis does end up playing in this series, I think the Pacers had a pretty good shot at winning the series. Now that Giannis is probably going to miss at least a few games, it seems like. They're not even just saying that he's going to be out for game 1. They're saying he's out for the start of the series, which in my mind is them kind of saying, if they thought it was a day-to-day thing, they would say he's out game 1 and that's it. I think they're anticipating him to be out maybe 2 to 3 games at least in this series, which, I mean, could be terrible. They could be down 3-0 by the time he ends up coming back and be in a huge hole. So I like the Pacers in this series, to be completely honest with you. I like the Pacers picking off the Bucks. I also liked the Pacers possibly picking off the Bucks if Giannis was fully healthy. I don't think I would have chose them in my predictions, but I did like the possibility of that. I would say the Pacers. I'm going to take the Pacers in 6 in this series because Giannis being out for a few games, I think it's just going to be huge. And I don't know who's going to hold down the rest of the 4. I mean, Damian Lillard obviously will be the go-to guy, but Chris Middleton's been banged up. They haven't really got secondary scoring outside of Damian Lillard while Giannis has been out throughout this season. Chris Middleton has not been the same player this year. He's definitely dealing with a lot of injuries. Brook Lopez kind of taken a step back. Bobby Portis has had a very, very underrated season coming off the bench. So I like him a little bit, but I just don't think that they're going to be strong enough to be able to beat the Pacers. So I'm going to take the Pacers in 6 in this series. And then the last series of the Eastern Conference, we have the number 2 seed, my New York Knicks, versus the number 7 Philadelphia 76ers. So obviously, probably the most intense game 1 that we've seen so far in the NBA playoffs was the Knicks versus the Sixers, a back and forth game. Sixers came out red hot, kind of got up onto a 10-plus point lead. Knicks fought all the way back. Knicks got to a 10-point lead, and then it came right down to the wire at the very end of the game. The Knicks ended up pulling away to take a 1-0 lead on the series. Obviously, the first game was at the Garden. The second game will be at the Garden as well, since the Knicks have home court advantage. This is there's a lot of takeaways in this series after game 1 for sure. And one of the big ones is the Joel Embiid injury, which we'll go over in a minute. But Jalen Brunson did not have a good game in game 1. He had 22 points, but he shot 8 for 26 from the field. It was the other guys that ended up pulling their weight and getting the Knicks over the hump. Josh Hart had 22 points and 13 rebounds, including 3 huge three-pointers down the stretch that ended up sealing the game for the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson off the bench had a fantastic game guarding and pretty much beating up Joel Embiid down low. He had 8 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 blocks coming off the bench, Mitchell Robinson. And then Miles McBride had a huge game, too, coming off the bench. He had a few big-time threes and had 21 points off the bench. It was just a great all-around performance from the depth of the Knicks. And Kelly Oubre, after making all those comments about the celebrities that sit courtside at the Garden, he ended up coming out and saying that the Knicks are a tough team because they have a bunch of starters that come off their bench. And it's true. I mean, Deuce McBride's become a starting caliber player. They got Mitchell Robinson coming off the bench. They have Bogdanovich coming off the bench, who's been a starter his entire career. I mean, they've built themselves a deep team, and everything was clicking yesterday. And the weights did not have to be on Jalen Brunson's shoulders. He didn't have to carry the entire offense. He still scored 22 points, but that's under his season average for him. And he shot terribly from the field. He just did not have a great game, and they were able to pick him up. Dante DiVincenzo also had a terrible game too. Was not shooting great from 3 either. And those were the 2 outside of Julius Randle. Those were the 2 leading scorers of the team. So they had their 3 leading scorers all off or not playing in the game. Obviously Julius Randle not playing, and then the other 2 being off, and they were able to pull away from the Sixers. And then on the Sixers side, Tyrese Maxey had a fantastic game with 33 points. Joel Embiid somehow was able to put together 29 points and 8 rebounds, even though it seemed like he wasn't able to be effective at all. And that leads us into Joel Embiid getting hurt in game 1. So obviously Embiid missed a lot of time this season due to a knee injury, and he fought his way back and ended up returning towards the end of the season and returned in time for the playoffs. But you can tell that there is a clear struggle on his end of with his knee injury. He is still clearly hurt. He's pushing himself to play, and he ended up tweaking it during the game too. Right before halftime, he threw the ball off the glass, alley-oop to himself, and as he was coming down, looked like he landed awkwardly on his knee, immediately went down, and it did not look good. It did not look good at all. The way that he ended up going down. So we everybody thought the worst when that kind of happened, but he ended up going back to the locker room and ended up coming out for the second half. But he was not the same player. He was not the same player in the second half. I mean, even at the beginning of the game, he's not jumping the same. He's not moving very fast. There was an interview before the game where he blatantly said that he's nervous. It's an anxiety type of thing. He doesn't trust his knee that much, so he doesn't want to jump that much. He doesn't want to run that much. He's afraid that it's going to give out at any minute. He doesn't feel confident in his knee right now. So the Knicks did a fantastic job of capitalizing on that. Mitchell Robinson bullied him down low, threw him around a little bit, and completely lethalized him from being a playmaker throughout the game. So I think that was a fantastic job by the Knicks, and they were able to do a great job of containing Embiid. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if the Sixers want any chance of winning this series, Embiid is going to have to play, and he's going to have to play to his standards as well, or else they're not going to have a very good time. Regardless, I think that the Knicks are going to win the series. I'm taking the Knicks in 6. I think that the Sixers always do play them well, even without Embiid. So I can see the Sixers taking 2 games, but I would still take the Knicks in 6. So my Eastern Conference predictions, I've got the Celtics. I got the Celtics to take on the Cavs in the second round, and then the Pacers take on the Knicks in the second round as well. And then the Western Conference, first series in the Western Conference that begins today. We don't have any information on the beginning of this series by the time the episode is being recorded. Is the number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder taking on the number 8 ranked New Orleans Pelicans. So the Pelicans ended up shocking the Sacramento Kings and winning the play-in tournament to get that final Western Conference playoff spot after the Pelicans blew it to the Los Angeles Lakers in the 7 versus 8 game. A lot of people thought that the Kings were destined to knock off the Pelicans, but Pelicans ended up winning by a pretty decent margin, so they were able to sneak in with the 8 seed. And normally, a lot of people were looking at the Thunder as a very, very weak 1 seed, mainly for the exact same reason as the Orlando Magic, as this is the first playoff games of the majority of these guys' careers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey, all of them, I don't think have played in any playoff games in their entire careers, and now they're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. But against the Pelicans, Zion Williamson is beaten up. He's probably going to miss the entire series, and Zion is the reason why this team was sitting in like the 5 and 6 seed throughout the season. They ended up falling all the way to a play-in spot, but the reason why they had such a good season is because of Zion. Without Zion, CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram are both going to have to carry the load. Ingram did not look good in the play-in tournament, being the go-to guy. So I don't have much faith in the Pelicans in this series. I really don't. I think OKC is going to capitalize on that. It'll go back and forth though a little bit. I like OKC to win this series. I'm going to say the Thunder win this in 6. I think that without Zion, it makes it so much more difficult. I think that the Pelicans had a legitimate chance of beating the Thunder if Zion was playing in the series and he didn't get hurt in the play-in tournament. But I think that the Thunder have too much star power. Chet Holmgren has also had a fantastic season, so I like their odds. And then we got the number 4 ranked Los Angeles Clippers versus the number 5 ranked Dallas Mavericks. This is the other series that we don't have any information on yet at the time of the record. Game 1 is being played on Sunday, but we don't have the outcome of that. But this is good. This is honestly one of my favorite series out of the 8 first round matchups. I think that this could go either way. This to me screams a 7-game series, to be completely honest with you. There's something about it that I just think the Clippers and Mavs are both going to go back and forth. I mean, obviously, Luka and Kyrie have become the best scoring duo in the NBA. They had a spectacular season this year together. And the Clippers, on the other hand, though, Kawhi Leonard was fully healthy throughout the year. Paul George looking healthy. They've gotten good performances from other guys too. Norman Powell has been good off the bench. Russell Westbrook, James Harden. James Harden has taken a back seat to Leonard, and Paul George is the third option. So the Clippers, come playoff time, they do have a loaded roster still, and I still would not doubt them to make a run. I could see them knocking off the Mavericks and then being able to knock off the Thunder in the second round and making it to the Western Conference Finals, making it past the Nuggets or the Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals, or even the Phoenix Suns. It would be a completely different story, but I can see the Clippers playing them tough. But the Mavericks have been good all season long too. Luka will probably finish second place in the MVP votes. It would not shock me at all if that were to happen. If it wasn't for Jokic having another insane season, then Luka probably would be MVP this year. But this is a very, very, very close one. I think it's going to go 7 games. I'm going to go with the Clippers in 7 games. I think a lot of people are like the Mavericks. I think most people probably are taking the Mavericks in like 5 or 6 games and do not trust the Clippers at all. I think the Clippers, they've had this team now together since 2019, and they haven't been able to do anything. Haven't even made it to the Western Conference Finals with this team. I think they're due. Kawhi has been healthy. There was rumors that his knee is starting to bother him again, but he's been relatively healthy throughout the entire season. And is probably going to make an All-NBA team. He was an All-Star again this year, so it was nice seeing him being able to play a full season again. And I think the Clippers, if they get going, I think that they could be a scary team. So I'm going to take them past the Mavericks. And then we have the number 3 ranked Minnesota Timberwolves versus the number 6 ranked Phoenix Suns. Game 1 already finished. The Timberwolves completely destroyed the Suns, which I didn't necessarily see coming. A lot of people, the Timberwolves are very similar to the OKC Thunder, except they're a little bit more experienced, but they haven't had much playoff experience either. Karl-Anthony Towns has been in the playoffs a few times. He was the Timberwolves when they had Tom Thibodeau there for a little bit. They were ranked pretty high, but they were never ranked. They were never really in the 1 seed conversation like they were this year. They had probably the best season in franchise, possibly the best regular season in franchise history. Definitely the best season since the 2004 Kevin Garnett Timberwolves. They were superb, and then Anthony Edwards, this is his first runs in the playoffs as well, and he completely balled out in the first game of the series. 33 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. Rudy Gobert also had a really good game with 14 points and 16 rebounds, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a dark horse player coming off the bench, had 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 steals for the Timberwolves in game 1. And then on the Suns side, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker did their thing. Devin Booker didn't have a great game, but Durant had 31.7 rebounds. Devin Booker had only 18 points and shot 5 of 16 from the field. Part of the reason why the Suns got blown out, I think Bradley Beal only ended up having 15 points or so. So Kevin Durant, like he was doing throughout the regular season too, has been almost single-handedly carrying this team. Devin Booker missed some time this year, so Durant had to carry the workload, and now come playoff time, he's carrying the workload too. This Suns team, going into the season, we were like, if they're fully healthy, we think that, they're a favorite to win the NBA championship. They're absolutely loaded with Durant, Booker, and Beal, and we see the way that it played out this year. Booker and Beal were very hurt throughout the season. Durant was able to stay healthy, but I don't know how well the 3 of them play together. They didn't play the three of them didn't play together almost at all throughout the regular season. So now that the 3 of them are fully healthy in the playoffs, it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to get some type of chemistry going and be able to beat this. But in my opinion, I think the Timberwolves are a much more structurally sound team. I think that they're just better coached. And they're also hungry too. And I think Anthony Edwards is becoming one of the best players in the NBA, is slowly creeping into the top 5 in the NBA. He's just an all-around superb player. And he's a guy that puts up great numbers, but doesn't put up like triple doubles every single game, all that kind of stuff. He impacts the game in a variety of ways that only the stars do. And you can't really put down in the stat sheet. Just by watching him, you can see what kind of a leader he is and how he dominates the game on and off the ball. So And for this series, I like the Minnesota Timberwolves. And winning this series, I would like to see. I like to see them in 6 games. I was tempted to say 7 games, but I think that they'll close it out in 6, being the home court team as well. But the Suns will win a couple of games, keep it close, but it just doesn't seem like the right time right now for the Suns. And then we have the number 2 seeded Denver Nuggets versus number 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers. First game of this series was on Saturday. The Nuggets ended up beating the Lakers. Lakers led the game for a long time, and then got completely gassed out come the third quarter, and the Nuggets took over. And that's what I honestly expected this entire series to be. The Lakers all season long have been able to play a good couple of quarters, but they don't have a deep enough team to keep up with a team like the Nuggets for the entirety of it. Jokic had 32 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. Jamal Murray had 22 points and 10 assists while shooting 4 for 9 from 3. Aaron Gordon had 12 points, 11 rebounds. I think their starting 5 has just been great. On the other side, though, Anthony Davis had a fantastic game, 32 points, 14 rebounds, 4 blocks. LeBron James had a solid game, 27 points, 8 assists. And D'Angelo Russell had a terrible game. And this is the X factor for the Lakers. Is Anthony Davis can do as much as he can. LeBron's going to carry the workload as much as he can, but guys like D'Angelo Russell have to step up, and shooting 6 for 20 from the field and 1 for 9 from 3 is not going to get it done, especially against the reigning champs, the Nuggets. To me, this series kind of screams that the Nuggets are going to kind of run away with this thing. I am taking all of the high seeds in the Western Conference to win the first round. I don't like to do that, but I just have a feeling for all of them. But I'm going to take the Nuggets in 5. I'll say that the Lakers. I'm not going to say it's a clean sweep. I'm going to say that the Lakers end up taking a game in Los Angeles, maybe game 3 or 4. They'll end up winning, but it's going to be either a sweep or 5 games. I don't think it's going to go anywhere past that. I think the Nuggets are just going to dominate the Lakers, and a lot of people saw that coming too. That's why like we talked about in the last episode, a lot of people didn't want the Lakers to win that playing game because they knew a first round matchup against the Nuggets was not going to go well. And I don't think it's going to go well at all. So I like the Nuggets in that. So my second round, I got the Oklahoma City Thunder taking on the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Denver Nuggets. So those are my picks. Those are my previews of the first rounds of the playoffs. And then with that being said, got to jump into some award predictions with the regular season completely over. I'll give you, if I was a known basketball analyst and I was able to, obviously one day that would be a great thing to accomplish, would be a dream of mine. But if I were to have a ballot for the following awards, this is how I'd fill them out. For the MVP award, my top 5, number 5, I'd have Jason Tatum. I had to put Jason Tatum in the top 5 just because of how dominant the Celtics have been, averaging 27 points, 8 rebounds, shot 37.6% from 3, was just spectacular. The number 4, I got Jalen Brunson. Brunson I think should be in everybody's top 5 for MVP this year. He doesn't have to be ahead of the main 3. There's the main 3 that people are going to argue should be the MVPs. I understand that. And everybody's top 3 should be the same 3 players. It could be in any order you want, but it should be the same 3 players. I think Brunson should be just outside of that, though. So I'd rank him at number 4. Number 3, I'd put Luka Doncic. Won another scoring title again this year. Got the Dallas Mavericks to be the 5 seed. Had a fantastic season. Averaged nearly a triple-double again, 33.9 points, 9.8 assists, 9.2 rebounds, shot almost 40% from 3. I mean, the dude is spectacular. Number 2, I got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the star player for the number 1 ranked team in the Western Conference. So he's got to show some love. I know that a lot of people have Jokic and Luka 1 and 2. I've got Shai just ahead of Luka, mainly because of the success that OKC ended up having. Averaged 30.1 points a game, 6.1 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and he led the league in steals this season with averaging 2 steals a game. And then number 1, winning his 3rd MVP, I would put Nikola Jokic. Nuggets were the reigning champs, spectacular again this season. Averaged 26.4 points, 12.4 rebounds, 9 assists. Once again, almost averaged a triple-double. So Jokic would be my MVP. And then my defensive player of the year, top 5. Number 5, I put Jaden McDaniels. Love what I've seen from him coming off the bench for the Timberwolves this season. He's become one of the better defenders in the NBA, averaging 10.5 points, 3.1 rebounds, 1.4 blocks coming off the bench. Number 4, I like Herbert Jones. I've always been a big fan of Jones when he was in college. I think he's turning into one of the best defensive players in the NBA as well. As a wing for the New Orleans Pelicans, he was able to snag 1.4 steals a game this year. Number 3, I've got a future defensive player of the year, a guy who I think is going to win defensive player of the year in the next probably 3 seasons, one of the next 3 seasons, Bam Adebayo. He had a spectacular year being the star player of the Miami Heat this year. He just had a better all-around season than Jimmy Butler did. More consistent, averaged 19.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, was absolutely superb, and especially on the defensive end. He's been great. And then the top 2 is going to be the same for everybody. Victor Wembanyama, who obviously had a stud rookie season, averaged 21.4 points, 10.6 rebounds, and led the league with 3.6 blocks per game. If it wasn't for Rudy Gobert, Wemby probably should win Defensive Player of the Year in his rookie season, but there's going to be plenty more chances. He's probably going to end up winning several by the time his career is over. And then number 1 is Rudy Gobert. I have him winning his 4th Defensive Player of the Year. He had a spectacular season on the defensive end after a very, very bad season last year. He did not adjust well to the Timberwolves last season, but he bounced back this year. Averaged 14 points, 12.9 rebounds, 2.2 blocks for Timberwolves this year. So Rudy Gobert is my Defensive Player of the Year. Then my Rookies of the Year. Obviously, number 1 is Victor Wembanyama, but the guys outside of that, number 2, I put Chet Holmgren, who is definitely a somewhat close second, I would say, to Wembanyama. I think Wembanyama is the guarantee to be Rookie of the Year, but the Chet Holmgren, the numbers he put up should win Rookie of the Year most other years. Then number 3, I got Jaime Jaquez. He had a fantastic year, especially his second half for the Miami Heat, slotting into their lineup. Keontae George, I got a number 4. He had a great season for the Utah Jazz, ended up starting at the end of the season. And then at number 5, I have Scoot Henderson, who became the Trailblazers' star point guard, with obviously Damian Lillard getting dealt away and all of that happening. So Victor Wembanyama would be my Rookie of the Year. So I'm taking, it's not a surprise. My MVP is Jokic. My Defensive Player of the Year is Gobert. And my Rookie of the Year is Victor Wembanyama. My 6th Man of the Year would be Malik Monk. I think that's going to be a given. I think, to be honest with you, I think most of the individual awards, I think, are pretty much determined at this point. There's not really like 2 or 3 guys in any of these races that are like neck and neck. I think that these guys are like definites that are going to win. And the most improved player would be Tyrese Maxey. I think that's also going to be a definite. He had a good year last year, but he completely emerged himself into a 25-point per game scorer while becoming an all-star this year. I think he's definitely going to be most improved player. And then to round it out, my first team, second team, and third team All-NBA. I think that, it's going to be a similar amount of guys, but it'll be interesting to see who ends up making each team. I think the first team, there's a few guys that are definite. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and Nikola Jokic, all should be on the first team. I have Giannis Antetokounmpo on my first team as well. I did not have him in my top 5 in the MVP voting. I had Tatum and Brunson ahead of him, but he definitely makes my first team. And then Anthony Edwards, I also have making All-NBA first team, which is a little bit of an interesting one. I have him making the first team over Tatum. And then on the second team, I've got Jalen Brunson, Kawhi Leonard, Jason Tatum, Anthony Davis, and Domantas Sabonis. I have on the second team. Sabonis had an absolutely incredible second half of the season, leading the Kings into a play-in tournament spot. And he got snubbed as an all-star, probably should have made it as an all-star. So very, very, very exciting second half of the season. And I think that's going to that's going to guarantee him either a second or third team spot when it comes down to it. He makes my second team. And then my All-NBA third team, I got Steph Curry, Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, Kevin Durant, and Zion Williamson on my third team. I think all of those guys are very, very well deserving of making the team. Obviously, Joel Embiid is nowhere to be found. He did not play in enough games to be with the new rule in the NBA. He didn't play in enough games to even be considered for any offseason awards. You can't miss a certain amount of games, or you're not allowed to, make any of these teams or be in the voting for any of these awards. Even though he did have a superb season, it was definitely limited. So that makes things interesting. And to round out the show, with the Golden State Warriors, we have to raise the question, what the Warriors offseason could look like. A quick glimpse at it. Obviously, the Warriors lost their first playing game to the Sacramento Kings. The Kings ended up losing the next game to the Pelicans and missed out on the 8th seed as well. But the Warriors did not have a great year this year. They ended up finishing as the 10 seed in the Western Conference. And they've got two big-time free agents this offseason. They have Chris Paul, who technically may not be a free agent, but he's got a $30 million non-guaranteed contract next season. It would blow my mind if the Warriors were to make that $30 million guaranteed. I think that they're going to deny that without a doubt. They're paying Steph Curry $55.7 million next season. They're paying Andrew Wiggins $26.2. They're paying Draymond Green $24.1. So I don't think that they're going to be paying Chris Paul $30 million next season. I think they're going to deny that. And then Klay Thompson is an unrestricted free agent, doesn't even have an option or anything. So I think those two guys are going to hit the open market. It's an interesting situation. They're going to free up a lot of money from those two guys. Klay Thompson made, I think, around $40 million this year. Chris Paul made $30 million this year. So they're from just those two guys, they're freeing up $70 million on their payroll. But they also have some other expenses that are coming up. Jonathan Kuminga only has 1 year left on his contract. He had a very good season this year. I could see them giving him the rookie max extension. I think they're going to put some money towards him because he kind of implemented himself as a key piece for this team and for the future of the Warriors too, even if they end up letting some guys go. And then the biggest question next is, what can you do? They're kind of stuck with Andrew Wiggins. I think that they kind of soured on Andrew Wiggins this year. They relegated him to the bench for part of the season, but they got him under contract for 2 more years and then a player option for a 3rd year. So they're probably stuck with him for 3 more years. They will be paying him $26.3 million next year, $28.2 in 25-26, and then he's got a $30 million player option for the 2026-27 season before he becomes a free agent, and he'll be heading into his age 29 season as well. So that makes things very, very interesting. Steph Curry's under contract for 2 more years. He'll be making 55.7 next year. He'll be making 59.6 the year after that, and then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. He'll be entering his age 36 season, so it'll be bringing him all the way until he's almost 40. I think they want to try to keep him under contract, and they just gave Draymond Green that 4-year extension, so they've got 3 years left with him, 2 years plus a player option for $27.6 million, which I think he'll definitely pick up in the 26-27 season. I'd be shocked if he doesn't do that. So it makes you think, will they bring back Chris Paul? Will they bring back Klay Thompson? They'll definitely be able to bring both of those guys back for cheaper than they got paid this season. I mean, Klay Thompson made right around $40 million. They think that there's already some interest from other teams, even though he didn't have a great season. People are saying the Dallas Mavericks might be a strong team to go after him this offseason, but he shouldn't make much over $20 million for his next contract, $20 million per year. I know he's going to want a multi-year deal. Chris Paul, on the other hand, I don't really even know what he's worth. He's definitely not worth $30 million, and he came off the bench this year and didn't put up the best numbers. He's about to turn 40 in another year. His clock is ticking away. I could see him signing a 1-year $10 million deal with somebody, something like that, maybe even a little bit cheaper than that to come off their bench. So I could see the Warriors ending up retaining him. But it'll be interesting. Do the Warriors decide to keep the legacy of Klay Thompson around, or possibly bring back Chris Paul to come off the bench for a lot cheaper, or do they decide to go to attack free agency? DeMar DeRozan is out there. Is going to be an unrestricted free agent this year. They're freeing up $70 million from both Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. Do they let both of those guys walk and decide to bring in DeRozan, who's right around Klay Thompson's age, but has not had the injury issues and is still a pretty damn good player. There's a couple of other guys, OG Anunoby, who I know that the Knicks are going to try to go hard after, but he could be an option of a guy that they try to go after. Pascal Siakam could be an interesting guy that the Warriors go after. There's a lot of interesting free agents. Tobias Harris is another one to try to shake up this team a little bit. Do they think that they can keep competing with the same core of Klay, Steph, and Draymond, or do they decide to go into a different direction? It's going to be very interesting to see. So I'm definitely excited about that. And we'll definitely be seeing that. But that'll do it for another episode of the 3&D. Want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench podcast network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the socials at the 3&D ETB. We'll be putting out content all week in case you missed the entire episode, so stay tuned for that. And once again, keep a lookout on the Empty the Bench's podcast network, as we'll be doing live shows for the NBA playoffs with Playback, who's our newest sponsor. Hope everyone has a great night. Make sure to like and subscribe to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a good night.